a period of time where the company struggles to release anything.
I don't think that they know what's going to happen next. The AAA industry is terrified right now.
Imagine working on a video game for years. Hundreds of people, millions of dollars, cutting-edge ideas, and then poof, it never comes out. No final trailer, no early access, no beta. Just rumors, leaks, and ghost stories told by industry insiders. Today, we're diving into the most ambitious game that never shipped. A project so massive, it could have redefined the genre. So bold, it had developers hyped to leave their mark on gaming history. But it never saw the light of day. It had world building on par with Elden Ring, the social depth of World of Warcraft, and survival mechanics that could have rivaled Rust. And yet, after years in development and a team of over 200 people, this game was quietly canceled just before release. But this isn't just one game's tragic end. We're pulling back the curtain on a pattern in the industry, where imagination collides with reality, and where some of the greatest ideas are left on the cutting room floor. Stick around, because one of these canceled games, it helped give birth to a billion-dollar franchise you definitely have played. And another? It was killed off just months before it could have changed the entire genre. Let's break down the most mind-blowing what-ifs in gaming history, and what happens when even the boldest dreams get shut down. To understand how a mega game can vanish into thin air, you first need to understand the rise of AAA ambition. In the early 2000s, game studios started to evolve from small creative teams into multi-million-dollar operations. Budgets ballooned, expectations skyrocketed. Publishers began aiming for games that weren't just fun. They had to be cinematic, massive, and ongoing. One hit could fund an entire company for a decade. One flop could bankrupt it.
Look, it's Superman!
Engines got more complex. Teams grew from 30 devs to over 300. You needed writers, level designers, AI engineers, lighting specialists, community managers, and a post-launch live service team. Suddenly, making a game wasn't just creative, it was corporate. This era brought us masterpieces like The Last of Us, Skyrim, and GTA 5. But it also created an environment where the stakes were impossibly high.
You do what I say, when I say it.
A new game couldn't just be good. It had to dominate Twitch, sell millions, and spawn sequels, merchandise, maybe even a Netflix show. This led to a dangerous formula. Developers pitched bold, never-been-done-before ideas to get greenlit. Publishers said yes, as long as it becomes the next Fortnite. And once that pressure kicked in, things often spiraled. Timelines stretched. Tech didn't cooperate. Creative visions clashed with market trends. And somewhere in the chaos, the original dream got buried under scope creep and meetings. This is the world that gave birth to Odyssey, Titan, Star Wars 1313, and so many more games that were meant to change everything, but never made it past the starting line. Coming up next, the untold story of Blizzard's Odyssey, the game so ambitious, it collapsed under its own weight, just months before it was ready to launch. In late 2023, the gaming world caught wind of a shocking revelation. Blizzard had canceled a secret project it had been working on for over 6 years. The name? Odyssey. This wasn't just any game. Odyssey was being described internally as Blizzard's most ambitious title since World of Warcraft. It combined elements of survival, crafting, exploration, and high fantasy storytelling, set in a massive open world where players were survivors from modern-day Earth, transported into a mystical realm. Sound wild? That's because it was. Imagine Rust meets Elden Ring, with the polish of Overwatch and the scale of WoW. That was the pitch. Blizzard had assembled a dream team, over 200 developers. They started building a brand new game engine from scratch to support all the systems this new world needed. Procedural environments, dynamic weather, base building, seamless multiplayer zones, the works. Internally, people were calling it a genre bender. So what happened? Sources say trouble began with the engine. It was ambitious but unreliable. Developers struggled with bugs, crashes, and performance bottlenecks. Progress slowed, morale dipped. Meanwhile, leadership kept shifting the goalposts, wanting to make it more accessible one month, more hardcore the next. Then came the biggest shakeup. Microsoft officially acquired Activision Blizzard. And with the ink still drying, Microsoft executives reportedly took one look at the Odyssey project and made a call. It was too risky, too unstable, too expensive. Just like that, it was over. Developers were pulled from the project in January 2024. Some were laid off, others were reassigned, and the public never even saw a trailer. To put it in perspective, Odyssey was so close to becoming real that internal builds were already being playtested. It had characters, a fully realized world, even a lore Bible. Yet it now sits in a digital graveyard. What's even more heartbreaking? People who worked on Odyssey say it was the most creative work of their careers. One dev even said, "It felt like we were building the next Skyrim. We were dreaming big, and for a while, we thought we'd actually pull it off." Coming up next, Blizzard's other mega project, Titan, another lost game that almost destroyed the company, but ended up creating Overwatch.
That was so cool! In that one battle, they had Soundquake.
Before Odyssey, Blizzard had another giant on its hands, Titan. If you thought Odyssey was ambitious, Titan was even more legendary. In fact, its shadow loomed over Odyssey for years. Back in 2007, Blizzard quietly started work on what was supposed to be the successor to World of Warcraft. Internally, it was pitched as a genre-redefining MMO that would blend deep RPG systems with fast-paced FPS gameplay. It was set in a futuristic Earth, split between ordinary lives by day and covert warfare by night. Here's how it worked. Players would have day jobs, like chef, teacher, or architect during the day. Then at night, they'd switch into combat mode as secret agents, fighting in high-tech faction wars. Dual lives, double XP, a new kind of immersion. Blizzard worked on Titan for over 7 years. 7 years? But the deeper they got, the more complicated things became. The game's engine was unstable. The vision was constantly evolving. And developers were frustrated by unclear direction. Some teams said it felt like they were building 3 different games at once. By 2014, Blizzard had sunk millions into Titan and had almost nothing to show for it. Leadership made a brutal decision: cancel the project entirely. Morale hit rock bottom. But here's where it gets wild. Not all was lost. A small group of devs salvaged core pieces of Titan, specifically its PvP mechanics and futuristic art style, and spun them into a brand new idea. That idea? Overwatch. Yep,
Did someone call a doctor?
Blizzard's billion-dollar hero shooter, winner of Game of the Year in 2016, was born from the ashes of a failed MMO. In a way, Titan didn't die, it evolved. And that raises a major what-if about Odyssey. Could it still live on in some other form? Could parts of its world, systems, or art reappear in Blizzard's future games? Because if Titan can rise from the dead, maybe Odyssey still has a shot too. Next up, more legendary games that were almost finished, and then vanished. You won't believe how close Star Wars 1313 was to release when Disney pulled the plug.
Time to tilt things back in our favor.
The escape pod? What are you doing?
Blizzard isn't alone. The history of gaming is filled with epic titles that were hyped, developed, nearly finished, and then canceled. Some of these games were so far along, developers had full playable demos. Others were already in the hands of the press, but in every case they just disappeared. Let's start with one of the most infamous, Star Wars 1313. Announced in 2012, this game was going to be the Star Wars title fans had been begging for. No Jedi, no lightsabers, just gritty underworld action. You'd play as a young Boba Fett, navigating the criminal hive of level 1313 on Coruscant. The trailer blew people away. It looked like Uncharted meets Mass Effect, but in the Star Wars universe. Then Disney bought Lucasfilm.
The Walt Disney Company is acquiring Lucasfilm, the global entertainment company.
Almost overnight, LucasArts was shut down, and Star Wars 1313 was shelved, even though it was nearly complete. Years later, concept art and gameplay footage leaked, showing what could have been one of the best Star Wars games ever made. Next up, Prey 2. Not the 2017 reboot we got, but the original sequel to the 2006 cult classic. It featured an open-world sci-fi city, bounty hunting gameplay, and a tone that felt like Blade Runner meets Mass Effect. Bethesda canceled it in 2014, citing quality issues. But insiders say it was a power play over studio control. Then there's Mega Man Legends 3, a dream project for fans. Capcom had even released a prototype version for the 3DS, letting players try the intro and give feedback. But right before launch, it was pulled. Capcom claimed it didn't meet expectations. Fans called it betrayal. And what about Battlefront 3? Not the modern EA version, the original sequel by Free Radical, the studio behind Time Splitters. It was nearly done. Leaked footage shows massive space-to-ground combat transitions that still haven't been matched. It was supposed to launch in 2008, canceled due to budget disputes.
Incoming fire!
Even Doom 4 had a version that got tossed. Before the reboot we got in 2016, ID Software was working on a darker, grittier version of Doom, almost like a military shooter set in hell. Too slow, too off-brand, so they scrapped it and started over. These games weren't canceled in the early stages. They were deep into production. Some had full voice acting, cutscenes, and nearly complete campaigns. That's what makes these cancellations so painful. They weren't just ideas. They were realities. Until they weren't. Next, we'll break down why this keeps happening. What is it about ambitious projects that causes them to crash? And what does it do to the people making them?
We lost the target! Repeat! Task Force X has lost the target!
So why do these massive dream-chasing games keep dying? It usually boils down to one thing: ambition outpacing reality. When developers pitch these huge ideas, the energy is sky high. Everyone's excited. Publishers are sold on the vision, but early enthusiasm rarely survives the production process. Here's what typically happens behind the scenes. First, the scope starts to creep. What began as a 50-hour campaign becomes a 200-hour open world with multiplayer, crafting, and seasonal events. Every department adds just one more feature, until the whole thing becomes a monster. Second, tech limitations hit hard. Games like Odyssey and Titan tried to build new engines while building the game itself. That's like designing a rocket while flying it. Every week the tools change and progress slows to a crawl. Third, leadership turnover. Big games often last 5 to 7 years. But the directors, producers, and leads don't always stick around. A new boss comes in with new ideas, and suddenly the entire project pivots, sometimes multiple times. Vision gets diluted. Then there's money. These games cost tens or even hundreds of millions. And when publishers look at the market and see Fortnite, Call of Duty, and Minecraft dominating, they get nervous. If your ambitious idea doesn't guarantee a hit, it becomes a financial liability. Finally, there's burnout. Devs work brutal hours on these projects. When a game drags on with no clear finish line, people quit. Or worse, they stay and mentally check out. By the time cancellation hits, it's often a weird mix of shock and relief. Ambition is a beautiful thing. It's how we got Breath of the Wild, The Witcher 3, and Red Dead Redemption 2. But ambition without stability, clear direction, or honest timeframes, that's a ticking time bomb. Coming up next, what happens after a game is canceled? You might be surprised how these projects live on in other games, and how fans keep their memories alive.
You are Wonder Woman.
When a big game dies, it doesn't always disappear completely. Pieces of it often live on, in other games, in studio culture, or in the hearts of fans who refuse to let go. Take Titan, for example. We already saw how it gave birth to Overwatch, one of Blizzard's most successful IPs ever. What most people don't know is that even Odyssey left behind design ideas, concept art, and engine tools that are rumored to still be used internally today. Sometimes entire mechanics get recycled. Elements from Star Wars 1313, like cover-based shooting and gritty cinematics, were later absorbed into EA's Jedi: Fallen Order. Even though that game had a different vibe, some DNA is clearly shared. Then there's fan culture. When a cancelled game generates hype, its community doesn't just vanish. Forums, subreddits, and YouTube channels dig up concept art, share early builds, and analyze every leaked frame like it's treasure. These games become legends, myths. And let's not forget developers. A cancelled project may break hearts, but it also teaches lessons. Game directors often take what they learned and apply it to the next big idea, like how Cory Barlog's failed Star Wars pitch ended up influencing God of War 2018. There's even a trend where fans attempt to revive cancelled games. Mods, fan-made remakes, and spiritual successors pop up all the time. Remember PT, the Silent Hills demo that never became a full game? Fans still recreate it, replay it, and even port it to new platforms. In a weird way, cancelled games leave behind ghosts, ideas that haunt the industry, inspire future titles, and make us wonder, what if? Next up, let's talk about why these stories matter. Why it's important to shine a light on what didn't get made, because they often say more about the industry than the games that did.
Can I have my bow back now?
You might wonder, why focus on games that never made it? What's the point of studying failures? Because these stories reveal something the finished games don't: the raw creative struggle. Cancelled games show us where the line is drawn between innovation and risk. They remind us that every legendary title we do get is built on the bones of dozens that never made it. For every Elden Ring, there are 5 projects that tried something wild and got shut down. They also give us a look at how the industry works behind the curtain. The pressure, the politics, the fragile balance between art and business. It's not always about a lack of talent. More often, it's timing, vision conflicts, or a shift in corporate priorities. And for developers, these cancelled projects are often where the best, boldest ideas were born. Even if the game dies, that creativity doesn't. It carries over into the next thing. It evolves. Plus, let's be honest, there's something fascinating about a great what-if story. Like hearing about a movie that was almost made by Spielberg or a song Prince recorded but never released. It sparks the imagination. Cancelled games matter because they represent pure, unfiltered ambition, before the polish, before the compromise. They're gaming's hidden history. And who knows? Maybe someday one of these dead games will rise again. Next, we wrap this up with a powerful reminder and a final push to keep imagination alive in gaming. Some of the most ambitious games in history never made it past the finish line. Odyssey, Titan, 1313. They were packed with promise, backed by talented teams, and aimed at redefining what games could be. But in the end, ambition alone isn't enough. Still, their stories matter. They shape the games we do play. They remind us that innovation always comes with risk, and that even failure can spark something incredible, like Overwatch rising from Titan's ashes. So the next time you boot up your favorite game, remember, behind it are countless others that never made it, built by people who dared to dream big. If you love these kinds of deep dives into gaming's forgotten history, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because what's coming next? It's even crazier. Thanks for watching.